Welcome to Threads of Enlightenment, a podcast devoted to helping you overcome challenges in your life that prevent you from becoming the best version of yourself. Each episode features interviews with people from all walks of life about their journey of self-development and the principles they utilize to overcome their fears to achieve their desired outcome. Ready to be enlightened? Here's your host, Ken Primus.
Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment, guys. And you know, my purpose is always here is to thank and welcome our guests because I know they're coming with a couple of things I deem very expensive. Time, 24 hours has been offered to every one of us. And what you do with that 24 hours will speak volumes about your life and who you are. The other is the journey. The journey comes to create who we are. And it deposited a couple of things within this individual, Dr. Hicks. And so we want access to that stuff. What is that stuff? Wisdom, knowledge, insight, foresight, all these things that he gained as a result of this journey that he went through. Why do we want access? Because we want to become better human spirits while we're here on this planet. Doc, thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
It is an honor, man. As I mentioned to you that I believe we are here for two journeys. First, to get to figure out and learn who we are. And then the other aspect of it, that linear movement, if you will, is we get to become servant. And so my question to you is, how do you serve mankind?
One of the things that I have always sought to do is find ways of making the world a better place. And that may just be your tiny little corner of it. But I think we look for opportunities, big and small. And if we can do that every day, we look for the chance to make life a little better for someone else, then I think we change the world that way, just a little bit at a time. And one of the things that I always have been driven to do, and I think is my primary purpose, is to learn. I'm a perpetual learner. I am a continual learner of all things that I can grasp. But it's not just for the sake of learning. Once I learn something, I feel compelled to teach it. I feel compelled to write it, to share it, to come on to shows like this and talk about it, to do whatever I can to share insights and wisdom, because life is just hard. And if we can share those insights, those bits of wisdom that we get along the way from learning, I think we make life better. We make life easier. It's never going to be completely easy, but it can be easier if we share that wisdom that we're gaining along the way. So I do that every chance I get.
I love it. That's one of the purpose of Threads of Enlightenment, and thus the name. I believe there's a tapestry that we're weaving, if you will, and the tapestry whereby people can come in and partake. They can extract wisdom, knowledge, whatever they need, because we are all, the purpose here is for us, once we get to know who we are, is to assist each other to reach back with that same grace and all of the love that we have been used to pull us out by someone else before. We can also, as they say, turn back and help someone else. And that's why we go through, I think we go through our pain, Doc, and come out because God saw that someone else needs some help and that we are willing to listen to him. One of our customs that we do here is go back, because I tell people we came from somewhere, and there's a history of us, the birth of us, if you will. We have this unit that is called the family. In this unit, we're going to learn a couple of very important things: relationship skills, critical thinking skills. We're going to learn about attitudes. We're going to learn several things. We're going to actually develop our modus operandi, as they say, the way by which we are going to move and think and so forth. What was your family unit like?
It was interesting. I'm very blessed to have a wonderful family system. I had parents that loved me. They were high school sweethearts until my dad passed away. They had a wonderful relationship together for many, many years, and they took great care of my sister and I. We were very blessed to have a great family. And the interesting thing in that is you would think that from coming from a healthy, happy family background, that I would know instinctively, or from their example, from their raising, I would know how to engage in relationships. And yet, in my early adult life, I ended up in a toxic first marriage. It was a terrible experience. It ended in divorce. I still have the emotional scars for that one. And that's where I really began to question this idea of what is love and how can we learn it, because I thought I knew it. I thought I understood it. And I really had, in many ways, the best case scenario, and still ended up in a terrible, toxic situation. And that's kind of when you come from the best case scenario, you then have to ask, what about people that weren't as lucky as me?
Yeah.
What about
Yeah.
people that come from dysfunctional families and from toxic families and from abusive parents? And what kind of world are we building in relationships when we have one, dysfunctional families, or we have healthy families that teach us how to love and have relationships within that unit, but it
Hmm.
doesn't necessarily translate into the greater world. We don't necessarily have all the knowledge and skills that we need, because having that healthy, happy family unfortunately made me very naive as a young
Yeah.
person. I didn't know how toxic the world could be. I didn't quite understand how manipulative things could be within a relationship and how cruel things could be within a relationship. And so that has led me on this journey to really dig in and seek the answers of what love is and how can we practice it regardless of where we come from.
I'm going to jump forward. Usually I'll walk a little slower, but I'm going to jump forward, Doc, because you've mentioned a couple of things that I want to investigate. First, let's deal with your college. You're heading into college, and then we'll come back to that as we continue the conversation. You're heading into that direction. What was your field of study, and why did you pick it?
My field of study at that time was ministry. I've spent a lot of years in the church and in mission work. Since then, my major, however, was psychology. And that
Mhm.
really set up a dual track in my life. I have a master's degree in mental health counseling. I also have a master's in divinity and a doctorate in ministry. And so I've had this dual track of both counseling in churches and also in the secular world in hospitals and clinics, but
Yeah.
also in theology and in ministry and in mission work. And sometimes they cross paths. For example, for many years, I led a recovery program that was a faith based program, but it also dealt a lot, obviously, with counseling and psychology in addiction recovery. And so as I entered college, I was really in this dual track already, knowing
Mhm.
that I wanted to be a minister, already planning to go to seminary, but majoring in psychology because I really felt a draw into that as well. And those have been sort of dual callings in my life ever since.
I think it's a great and beautiful expression, if you will, within one human being, the combination of both the spiritual and the natural knowledge, if you will, coming from the spiritual side, the divinity degree, and then the psychology side, which has to still deal with the human part of us, which is truly who we are. You embody who we are.
Yeah, we
The
are both. We
spiritual.
are we
Yeah,
are
we're both.
we're
So,
psychological beings, we're spiritual beings. We live
yeah,
in this real tangible world where we deal with people, we deal with situations, but we also have we don't just do that from a physical sense. We have a
yeah.
spiritual side to us. And so I've always seen that had an understanding of that and always pursued those two lines of study.
Yeah, that's lovely. I can't wait. So here you are. You're in college. You're pursuing this your dreams, if you will, and you're understanding. You're getting the insight and knowledge. What did it begin to do to you? Here is this naive young man. I guess he's came from a solid upbringing, but as he said, he's a little naive, and he's gaining knowledge about psychology. He's seeing stuff, that I'm sure is testing that naiveness that he had when he was a young child. What began to happen to you, Don?
At that particular point in my life, as I look back, coming from that healthy family, that gives a person a lot of confidence because you feel strong within yourself, and that's a good thing in most ways. But you feel like you are capable when you're told as a child that you're capable, and I had evidence for it. I made good grades and all of these things, so I was feeling good about myself. And as I got into my psychology major, but I'm also taking religion classes and preparing for seminary, I really had a very strong ego
Mm.
and felt like I had a handle on life. And someone asked me, yeah, it's funny now. I laugh at myself too. It's hilarious. It's like, oh, it's so absurd to think this. But someone asked me around that time, just before that, actually, like I think I was a senior in high school, going into my almost graduation, and they asked me, well, where do you think you'll be in 10 years? Easiest question in the world. I
Yeah.
rattled off exactly what was going to happen in my life for the next 10 years, and none of that happened. It's just absurd. And I think, as I said, I had a lot of good things going for me, and that's what motivates me now to
Yeah.
try to show what love is and how to practice it. Because when you come from a healthy background and you have a lot of things going for you, you're making good grades, and you have your future sort of planned out, it's
Mhm.
easy to get cocky and think,
Yeah.
I got this.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that led me into that toxic place and that toxic marriage because, I thought relationships would be easy.
Yeah.
I had friends, I had
It was
family.
easy with mom and dad, right?
It's easy at mom and dad. I had my friends, what could go wrong? And it was really a very egotistical thing on my part to think, well, whatever red flags might be there, I can take care of that. And the thing is, that lasted a long time. I wish I could say, well, that was just when I was a kid and, I got over that. It lasted a long time because I was in that very toxic situation for 13
Wow.
and for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
One is I came from a religious background, so I didn't
Yep.
believe in divorce.
Yeah.
I believe until death do you part. I would not give up on that. Secondly, I was egotistical enough to think I would fix this.
Yeah.
I would find a way. I would be strong enough, smart enough, spiritual enough. I would pray enough. I would be and the other thing was by the time I was really understanding how toxic this had become and what a big trouble I was in, I was already in ministry. I was already through getting my master's degree in counseling at this point. And I
Yeah.
thought, I'm a therapist. I'm a minister. I come from a good family. How could this be happening to me? And I would not admit that this was just a train wreck of a relationship. It was horribly toxic and could not continue, but I would not let it go. I was determined I would fix it to the point that 13 years into this, I came to the place I knew I had to get divorced or I had to die, one or the other.
Yes.
That's where I
Yes.
came to. And I chose divorce.
I'll tell you a story about that later after you finish.
Okay.
your thought.
Yeah. And so I had to come to that place before
Mhm.
I would get over my ego and admit this was a mistake. This was wrong. I could look back and see the red flags. I just didn't want to admit it to myself, to my family, to church. I think church is a wonderful thing. I hope I'm not misunderstood with what I say here,
Yeah.
but it can also be a very difficult thing to go through something
Yeah.
like divorce, especially when you are a leader in the church. There's a lot of judgment there on
Yeah.
occasion. And I was scared of that. And that came through. That's another reason why I was scared to venture into the divorce because I knew there would be judgment from some people. Not everyone. I was treated
Yeah.
very well by many, but by some. And that was hard to face within the church. But ultimately, I decided that it was better to face all of that fear and all of those things that I was afraid of than to think about taking my own life. I didn't get far down that road. I quickly decided that I had to divorce and take the consequences.
Yeah. Job said the thing that I feared has come upon me. And so we know from as we are studying personal development and growth that we call those things in upon ourselves and we know what type of things he was fearing because we read about what happened to him in a day. I don't think any of us have gone through that. You're telling your story, Dr. Hicks, and you're mimicking mine because I grew up in church, did the same thing. The red flag started from the dating, man. The red flags, and I was telling people, I remember when in retrospect, it was not no little flag. It was like those big giant red flags that they have at the racing place. And so just ignore it because, as you said, I can handle it. I can handle this. I got into ministry. Mine was 11 years and I had to come to that same place. And I remember driving on the highway and I said to myself, I refuse to die. I knew part of me would have to die in order to make this relationship work. And I said, no, I can't do it. And I remember, thinking about the same thing because I know how the church ostracize people that are supposed to be leaders. And when a leader when he's going through his testing or their period of testing, it's amazing how the church people turn out to be some really interesting folks and you get to see their true religion, if you will. And I was there, so I understand exactly what you're talking about, the guilt, the shame, all of those things that walk with you as a result of that. And I basically, Dr. Hicks, I turned my back on God. I was like, I failed. I'm done. I'm out of here because I can't, if I can't fix mine, I can't fix nobody. And I took off and he took some time and put me back together and so forth. But yeah, he doesn't give up. The Holy Spirit does not give up. He's pretty good at pursuing you to get to, So here you are, man. You got yourself in this and you're going to go, okay, let's go. Let's come out. once you made that decision, because after we made that decision, I know what happened, but let's talk about it.
Yes, you do.
Let's talk about it a little, man. After you made that decision as to what began to transpire in your life, what did it look like at that point in time?
Several things. My ex, by them becoming ex-wife, did say a lot of things about me that were untrue. And within the church, rumors are difficult to deal with.
Yeah,
And I had to make a decision that, you can't really prove a negative.
yeah,
You can't prove yourself innocent.
yeah,
And so I made the decision that I was not going to deal with that. I would not defend myself. I would let
yeah,
people believe whatever they wanted to believe about me because I couldn't change that. And I think that really helped me to realize that people were going to think what they were going to think. And that was just part of the consequences of going through this. And the people who took the time to know me, that took the time to listen to what I had to say if they asked me, they were my friends. They were the
yeah,
people that stuck with me. They were my family. They were the people that really, truly took the time to know me and learned that I was innocent of these things, but I
yeah,
would not defend myself. And I think that was a very important thing for me psychologically, to not chase those rumors, to just let people decide for themselves. And if they decided to turn on me, that was their decision. And I would try not to resent them for it. Sometimes I did, but I worked at trying not to, and believe that in the long run, my character would win out. And that's exactly
yeah,
what happened. In the long run, the short run was very difficult.
yeah,
In the long run, people saw who I was. People
yeah,
that wanted to notice that in the long run, I continued to find people. I had a thought somewhere along the line. I thought very much about leaving ministry, just going to get a job somewhere and not dealing with all the stuff that you deal with. And I had a thought that came from the Spirit that said that God has given me something to say, and
mhm,
I need to say it, whether anybody listens or not. It's not my
yeah,
responsibility for them to listen. It's my responsibility to say it.
yeah,
And that goes back to that sense that I've been called to learn and to share what I've learned, and I continued to do that. And so I did kind of make it through those difficult times. I did stay in ministry for a long time until I sort of not officially, but in a sense, retired from a pastoral ministry to become a full-time writer and share these things about love in writing. And so in a lot of ways, I consider myself still in active ministry, sharing this message of love and how to live these relationships. And while I swore I would never, ever, ever get married again, I met Heather and changed my mind. And so I have often said that I've had a bad marriage and now I have a good marriage, and good is better. Good is a lot better. We need to strive for this. And I have come to understand through all this experience, through these hard knocks, and through psychology and counseling, and through spirituality and theology, I have come to understand that love really is possible.
yeah,
That
it is.
that it is possible, it does exist, and it is a practice that we have the capacity within us because we are creations of God,
Mhm,
and particularly if we did grow up with parents that love us, we've had an example of love, but it is still something that has to be practiced, and if we get
yeah,
cocky and just think we can just kinda wing it, that's going to be a mistake. We don't do that with any other area of life. We go to
yeah,
school to learn everything. We go to trade school to learn our jobs. We go to universities. We go to YouTube to learn how to cook, a
mhm,
dish
yeah,
that we want to cook. We learn how to do these things, but somehow with the most important area of life, we think we just instinctively know it. And I don't know how we came to that decision. And so I hope that we can start to reverse that and think this is something we have to learn. That love is learned just like every other skill set.
yeah.
That we have the instinct, we have the ability, we have the God-given ability, but in a fallen world, we still have to practice it. And so I hope to help people practice it as I am practicing it in my life.
Yeah, image and likeness. And so we have the capability, but as you
Yeah.
said, it's a fallen world. And because it is, we have to learn that aspect of it. And because we have been separated from God, the pure stuff that our forefather Adam walked in when he named the animals. God was like, yeah, that's whatever, he's in charge. And so when that separation took place, he lost his way. And so that's the journey, if you will, to get back to see who you are and why you're here. So you're now putting all of this stuff in you, man. Here you are. You didn't leave. You said, I'm going to walk this treacherous road, if you will, because I know exactly what they did. Now they did this to you. So here you are in there Dr. Hicks, and how did you manage being in that? How did you, because again, you're collecting data through both sides, both worlds, and you're a representation
Mhm.
of both the psychology piece and the divinity piece. How did you manage yourself in that mix? Because I know from personal stuff what
Mhm.
that mix looks like. How did you, or how did you make it out, if you will, from being in there?
Yeah, it was not easy, and I would never say that is an easy path to go through something like that. But there were a couple of things. One is I had a sense from the beginning of this was going to be the long haul, that this was not
Hmm.
going to get better quickly, and I tried to accept that. I didn't always do that well. There were certainly times that I got angry, got frustrated, and depressed along the way. But I knew that if I would stay the course, that I would stay faithful to what I knew to be true,
Yeah.
that there would be life beyond that time. And there was. The other thing is I did have support around me. And while some people did turn their back on me, some people turned on me, I did have a lot of support. And I think that is absolutely crucial. And one of the things I learned from that and practiced, sometimes bumbling, sometimes not fully grasping what I was doing, what I was really doing is just grieving that loss,
Yeah.
grieving the
Hmm.
loss of the dream,
Yep.
grieving the loss of my ego,
Yeah.
grieving the loss of my status in my own mind because now I was embarrassed and
Yep.
feeling guilty.
Same here. Yeah.
So much loss, and while no one died, it hurts like someone died. And what I learned and what I've come to express since then, but I learned it in that period of time, is there are some things so painful that it's like
Mm.
it leaves a hole in your heart
I think
that
so.
and that will never fully heal, but you can live a really good life with a hole in your heart. And I think I came to grasp that along the way. I didn't learn to articulate it till later, but that's where I learned it, is in the mix of all of that, of this is never going to fully heal. That period of my life is always going to hurt. Some of the things that happen, I'm always going to remember. I'm always going to have the emotional scars from that, but that doesn't mean I can't live a good life. And I've shared that with a lot of people in a lot of different situations, whether it's a loss of a family member or a death in the family or a divorce or coming through recovery from addiction, whatever the struggle and the turmoil is. I have told people it doesn't necessarily heal. You may always have a hole in your heart, but that's
Hmm.
okay. You can live a really good life with a hole in your heart. And that's what I'm doing. I will always have emotional scars from a lot of that time, but that's okay. I'm living a really
Yeah.
good life and I'm able to share some good lessons with a lot of people. And that makes it worth it when you can
Yes.
share the lessons you've
I
learned.
think so.
I had a lady that read my book. It was originally self-published. That's no longer available because Morgan James Publishing picked it up, I'm glad to say. And
Hmm.
it will be available in June of 25 from Morgan James Publishing. But when the self-published version came out, she read it. She was in her 80s, had had a wonderful life with her husband who had passed on, and wonderful life, wonderful family, and was very happy. But she read my book because she wanted to just read my book because she knew me. And
Yes.
she came back to me and she said, "The things you teach in this book, I wish I had known 50 years ago."
Mm.
And I thought that was a very powerful statement, that someone who was happy in her marriage, happy in her family, had lived a really good life, understood there's still things to learn about love.
Yeah.
And that has led me to try to get to those people 50 years prior, get
Yeah.
to people that are early in life. But that doesn't mean that later in life you can't learn things and
Yeah.
change things. But especially when you're starting out in life or starting out with a marriage or starting out in a new marriage, when you're starting
Hmm.
over, there are things to learn about love that I really hope to share.
Yeah. One of the things that I've learned, Dr. Hicks, is grief, whether you lose a job, whether death of someone you lost, a marriage, because there is grief, and the process of grief is the same, whether it's death,
Yeah.
whether it's a job, or whatever it is, the process of healing is the same, and it mirrors in all. And so because I interviewed someone and she talked about wanting to commit suicide, and then she had the revelation that, and I never saw it until she said it. I thought it was one of the most powerful things I've ever heard. She said, "I didn't kill myself because I realized, wait a minute, that was only the death of something I expect. I can create other things. I don't need that's okay. Just go through the grieving process. but I don't need to take my life because I'm just grieving the loss of something else. And I thought, wow, that was a beautiful insight from this young girl. And so
It is.
here you are, Doc. He got brutalized, because I know the brutalization that happens in there. And you come out, you come out different, but you come out. As you are out, if you will, and you're moving, and you said you made this commitment to yourself, I'm never going to do that again. And I know God always laughs at stuff like that. But here you are. You now have the opportunity because he wants to teach you a couple of things, and he has to bring that partner back in play. And what he wanted for you to bring to us was about relationship, but you picked the wrong one because he and now he still wanted that assignment that he had for you to be accomplished and bring out, because as you said, those folks give the story of the lady that was 80 said, if I had that earlier.
Yeah.
So he still wants this information to be given to people earlier. When she came into your life, how did you prepare yourself for that? Because again, there's a lot of letting go. There's a lot of facing self, realizing, being empathetic with yourself, forgiving yourself, all of those wonderful things, because, we are the biggest screw up. We look back and say, I'm panicking. I don't want to do that again. So how did you process that journey, Dr. Hicks, then to now become one that is open to this new relationship?
Yeah, it took some time. My wife, when we first met, she had recently been divorced as well, and so we were both very leery. We had a sense that, yeah, of course, we wanted to socialize, we wanted to go out to nice restaurants and have someone to talk to, but we were not looking for a marriage. So, one of the things that we said on our first date was, okay, if we stay together, we don't want to get married. But the thing is, as we talked about it, we both talked about our experience, and we both went through that process and shared with each other, what we had been through in our old relationships, and how we never wanted to go through those things again. And we started to realize that we were looking for the same thing.
Same thing, yeah.
We had been through those dark times, and we had been through those difficult relationships, and we started to realize we're actually very compatible, and we understand each other, and we want to build something. We want to build something different. And after a while, the sort of the fear goes away, and there was a trust there. But it's not something that we really wanted to rush into. It's something that we wanted to take our time with. Looking back, it actually went pretty quickly, but at the time, we were cautious and wanted to take our time, and allowed each other to be okay going slow, and being scared and not wanting to commit too much too soon. I think that actually, in a strange way, sped up the process. It helped us build that trust, because wherever we were in the process, we were okay with that, and for each other, because we had both been through it. And I think that's kind of important, just to give yourself the time you need. That's different for everyone. And to go through that process of building trust, because grief is that superpower that we can learn to trust again. If we don't grieve, we put up barriers, we put up walls, emotional walls, to keep people at arm's length and protect ourselves. But when we grieve and we come to that place that we understand that we can live a good life anyway, despite the hurts of life, because no one gets through life without scars. Everyone gets hurt along the way, some way or another. And when we grieve, we have this sort of superpower that brings us into a place that we can learn to trust again. We can learn to connect again. And that's a process. Don't rush it. Take time. But as you look back, I think it's probably going to be less time than you imagined it would be if you're not rushing it.
Yeah, I know. He said in the scriptures, rains on the just and the unjust. And he says, when you're going through the fire, I'll be there. When the flood is there, he said it's not going to flood. So he didn't tell you you're never going to go through. For some reason, us Christians don't believe that we'll ever go through anything. And then that's when our world grows up and we lose our mind, because I don't understand what fantasy we are thinking about. But that's how we are. So here you are now, and we're walking into the aspects of the lessons that you learned in love, because I wanted to come to this Genesis where you guys began to put this together. Now God is going to put you in the school, in the classroom, if you will, to begin to decipher the insights that he's now going to reveal to you. Talk to us, Doc, about what did you learn as God is going to be communing with you to talk about love and your revelation of love that you cause you to put it down into these pages? What were some of those um, insights, revelation, if you will,
Mhm.
that you started to see that is pinnacle in man and woman relationship, as well as others outside of marriage and stuff, just relationship in general? Talk to us about that.
Yeah. The idea I did understand that grief played a big role.
Yeah.
And I listed in my book as the first component of that we have to learn to grieve to get through those tough times in order to stay connected. One of the things that I knew early on, and I still know, is how important emotional connection is in love. I think we all understand that to some extent, that
Hmm.
emotional connection is important. But what I came to understand, particularly in my relationship now, and I'll say it as a backdrop. When I married Heather, she had three boys, has three boys, and when we married, they were 9, 11, and 13.
Mm.
And so I got three boys at 9, 11, and 13 to raise teenagers
Hmm.
alongside her, which was a wild ride and great and difficult and all the good things
Yeah.
and all the difficulty at the same time. But one of the things I really learned in that, and I included in my book, is the practical side of love.
Yeah.
That, yeah, we have to have the emotional connection, but we also have to live together well. And this is
Hmm.
where so many people struggle. And I think being thrown into this family of three preteens and teenage boys really helped me to understand the practical side of love. You may have heard someone say, I love them, but I can't live with them.
Yeah.
Well, these are people that have an emotional connection, but they have failed in this sense of practicality. And
Hmm.
by practicality, I mean in a relationship, or particularly a marriage, you have to make financial decisions, and you have to
Hmm.
be wise in that, and you have to communicate there. Communication itself is a skill set that you have to learn to have good relationship. And it's a learned skill set. If you're not good at it, it's something you can learn. Learning to deal with household chores and parenting issues, particularly when you're talking about step parenting, it can be even more complicated. But
Yeah.
in any situation, parenting is going to be complicated. And we have to talk about these things. Things like mental health.
Yeah.
This condemns a lot of marriages because there's mental health issues that are not being addressed.
Hmm.
We have to, if we have things like depression, anxiety, these are things that not only wear on us, but they wear on our relationships. And they are treatable conditions. Everyone, as just a practical reality, needs to be taking care of themselves as much as possible. And in the area of mental health, I say everybody needs to be in counseling.
Yeah.
And I get pushback on that sometimes, but everyone needs a therapist, a counselor, a coach,
Hmm.
a pastor, someone who can help you in those times of need and help you see the practical ways through these difficulties of life. Because we go to doctors for our medical doctors for our physical health, we go to a dentist for our teeth, we go to a mechanic for our car. Why would we do anything less for the sake of our health and our relationships? And so all of these practical elements, I think, really make a huge difference that I didn't understand early in life when it was all about just making emotional connections. Later in life, I really began to understand how important it is to balance, not to do
Hmm.
away with, not to overlook emotion. I think sometimes we go the opposite extreme and say, love is all about commitment and duty and honor.
Yeah.
And no, it's about emotion, it's about
Yeah.
connection. But within that connection, there is practical side of living life well together. Those kinds of aspects are things that I've learned along the way, particularly in this new relationship in the last 15 years of marriage that I've
Yeah.
enjoyed. We've learned how to navigate those things together.
And you guys are listening to our conversation, man. We are going to provide all of Dr. Hicks links so that you can get access to the book and all of the other services that he put together. And the purpose is that we, especially those that are in marriages and so forth, and a healthy marriage is, from the Bible point of view, is like a piece of heaven on earth, man. And so I wish that for everyone. And all of you guys that are struggling, I know I've been there. Dr. Hicks has been there, struggling so hard and fighting against those red flags. And many of you are in churches and you're still in this thing because of what we are being taught there and putting yourself and the children at risk and all of these different things. I know what that does to the mind, and you would need mental health to deal with a lot of these things. And so we understand the shame that is with that. And I have someone that is able to speak directly to all of that. And we're going to give you guys access to that. So here you are, Dr. Hicks. Talk to me as to this assignment, because it is an assignment. I tell people we all came here for an assignment. The assignment comes out of the understanding and the purpose of our journey and our pain and our trauma, and it wraps up our assignment in there, and we are able to do what we are called to do while we're here. As you are engaging with your assignment, and and I only ask this question for some people because of when I feel led to ask it. What is it on your heart now? At this point in time, we are in 2025, the beginnings of it, in that you, from your relationship with God, and you're feeling this weight upon your heart. What is it? And where do you think He's taking you to? And if you can speak to that.
Through all this journey, I've been learning what love is and how to practice it. That's the name of my book, Learning Love. And I know that in these times that we live in, there is no more important topic than that of love. That's always been the most important topic. But we can see so many areas now that we desperately need to grasp this idea of love. The Surgeon General, a couple of years ago, put out a report that talked about the epidemic of loneliness in the United
Mhm.
States, called it a public health crisis. And it's not just in the United States, it's a lot of other places as well. And we struggle with family, as we have talked about today, of how difficult marriage can be in some situations. When we talk about friendships that are so difficult in our world, we have so many acquaintances and social media contacts, but having deep friendship can be really difficult for a lot of people. Connecting with coworkers so that work is not just a grind, it is a place that we can work together and love together. Love is very different, obviously,
Yeah.
than with coworkers than it is with family members, but it's still a connection of caring and compassion. This is what we need in the world. There is so much tension and so much hatred and so much that we are
Yeah.
carrying now. And so many people want to fight. And I understand that that is maybe even a necessity in some cases. But when we step back and look, what do we really need? We need to learn what love is and how to practice it.
Yeah.
It is the solution not only to our marriages, to our family struggles, to our struggles with loneliness in our communities, the struggles we have within our churches, the struggles we have in politics. I know it sounds like a cliche, but love is that most powerful thing.
Yeah.
It is the greatest wisdom. It is the greatest healer. And if we learn what love is and how to practice it, it can change literally everything in our world. And I believe that's the message of Christ. He came to share what love is and how to practice it, and showed us the perfect example of what love is. And so my driving force is to do my part of taking what I've learned in the area of love and relationships and to share that as much as I possibly can, because I believe that changes literally everything if we learn the skill set of love.
Yeah, it is, as we mentioned, you and I mentioned, this is the beginning of the beginnings, guys, right there, about love. They came to Jesus as what is the greatest commandment out there? Of course they always want to trip Jesus up, and he looks at them, he says, well, this is it. Sums up in everything. To love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy mind and all thy strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. The reason why the world is such a mess is because that word right there is not being adhered to.
Exactly right. And I met a couple one time. They were probably in their 70s, I would imagine. And they asked me what I did for a living. I said, I'm a writer. She said, what do you write? I said, I write about love and relationships, how to practice healthy, happy relationships.
Yeah.
And she said, and rolled her eyes with her husband there beside her and changed the subject. And that was probably the most dramatic. But I've had others that treat love, even the word love and the topic of love, like it's trivial, like
Yeah.
it's silly, or like it's not real life. It's
Yeah.
something that we see in rom-com movies. And
Mhm.
what I want to show is that it is a real skill set.
Yeah.
And that's why we struggle so much in our families and our churches and our communities and in our politics and our nation and in its struggles around the world, is because we've treated love like it's some abstract notion, it's some silly thing, or it's a rom-com movie. And it's not.
Yeah.
It is God. God is love. And we at our creation are creations of love in the image of love. And we're never going to have the world we were meant to have, and the life we were meant to have, until we stop dismissing the conversation of love and really learn what it is.
Yeah, we've cheapened it. We've made it like a commodity
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
throw on the market and love. No, no, no. When you look at, God is love. I mean, is.
Exactly.
So definite article. I mean, you got a problem outside of that. And if you're not connected to that, you're lying.
Yeah.
So
And
how can you not be connected to the source of love and express love? There's no way. You don't know
no,
what it looks like. You don't know what it is because he is. So then you need to go to him to have him now give you some insight as to what does that mean and practical sense. And he had this gentleman in with the name of Dr. Mark Hicks to go through some stuff so that you can learn because God showed him some practical stuff so that he can teach you and I so we can apply it in our life and make some definite changes and be a part of the process of expressing love in practical behavior and lifestyle that we live in. Dr. Hicks, thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment. This has been a good one, man. I had a lot of fun laughing with you and enjoying because I know I can I know your story.
you do. You absolutely do. This has been a pleasure. I thank you so much for having me on your show.
It's been a good one, man. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Threads of Enlightenment with Ken Primus. Hopefully you're now feeling more empowered to overcome the challenges in your life, whatever they may be. Share that inspiration with others by telling them about this podcast, rating it, and of course, remember to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. For more connection, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram by searching for Threads of Enlightenment. Until next time, stay enlightened.